Did you know that Steve Jobs was one of the original developers for Breakout? But of course he didn't do it alone. He had his partner and collaborator Steve Wozniak to help him. The story goes that Atari promised Steve Jobs a $5,000 bonus if he could prototype the game in just a few days. Jobs and Wozniak managed to do it, but Jobs told Wozniak the bonus was actually only for $700, meaning that Wozniak only got $350, while Jobs got the other $4,000 some and went on a trip. Anyways, as a fanboy of video games, I try not to get too wrapped up in what I expect of the game as a fan. I just find myself often getting really disappointed. So that said, when I go to play a video game and it's not that good or what I want it to be, I try not to get too upset about it and simply just move on and remember the things I like. I try not to get wrapped up into fan fiction kind of ideas and what ifs about something that simply just, well, doesn't exist. But of course that doesn't mean that I sometimes just don't dream about the sequels I would love to see the most from certain video games and franchises. So today is my top 5 sequels that I would eventually like to see. Number 5 on this list is Blood-Borne. Though many of you might assume that Skyrim is my favorite RPG, I honestly think Blood-Borne might be not only my favorite RPG ever made, but probably in my top 3, top 4 favorite video games of all time. There's this weird part of me that I hope Blood-Borne never gets a sequel, so it can kind of be held on this pedestal as this singular, wonderful game that managed to just be great and awesome without having to milk it into a franchise. But of course that doesn't mean that I don't want to return to it, because I do return to that game very, very frequently. Number 4 is a little game that you may have heard me talk about once or twice, and that is Deadly Premonition. If you don't know what this game is, it is a flawlessly imperfect, wonderful piece of storytelling and a gaming experience that is simply unmatched. I think there is a ton of ways that the story can continue on, especially with its star Francis York Morgan, but in a way we will be kind of getting a sequel-esque spiritual successor to the game called The Good Life, which is the next game by Swery, the dude who made Deadly Premonition, which kind of features very similar like qualities. It's a murder mystery in a small town where all of its inhabitants play kind of are their own characters and things that with their own daily routines that you can go and follow and spy on and watch and do the weird things that you do in Deadly Premonition. Number 3 is Bully. Bully is a game that I don't think Rockstar has attempted to even try to make before or after its release. And though Bully has everything in it that kind of makes a Rockstar game, I believe it is Rockstar's biggest departure, at least in their mainstream franchises aside from the table tennis, Rockstar Table Tennis. That was weird. Where's our sequel of that? And because Bully is so restrictive of what Rockstar is best known for, most notably its controversial violence and adult-oriented themes, I feel like Bully is a much more creative game from Rockstar in the sense of how they kind of tone down those things while still amplifying kind of stories and characters in such a way that you don't get to see developed in their other games. I would just in general love to go back to Bulworth as a different student and character and kind of relive the seasons and go to classes and all the other weird mundane stuff you did in that game. Number 2 is Luigi's Mansion. I want another Luigi's Mansion. I want another Luigi's Mansion so bad. I feel like Luigi's Mansion is the closest we ever got to Nintendo making kind of a point-and-click style adventure game. Both Luigi's 1 and 2 in so many ways remind me of kind of that almost like Resident Evil style gameplay where you're in a mansion and you unlock certain parts of the mansions, you solve more puzzles and collect items and stuff like that. I adore those games and I want one on the Switch. And number 1 is in fact not Pikmin, but I would love to see a sequel or at least another installment in the Hotel Dusk / Last Window franchise. So speaking of point-and-click adventure games, Hotel Dusk was one that came out for the Nintendo DS, I think back in 2006? Yeah, 2006. So at the time of which this game came out, there really were much fewer options for point-and-click adventure games, especially on mainstream consoles like something like the Nintendo DS. I tend to fall in love with games that have a very distinct aesthetic but also have a lot of weird faults that kind of add to its charm, and I think Hotel Dusk is one of those games that just has such a distinctive style that I haven't really seen in other games, a really quirky, wonky, jazzy soundtrack that just makes me feel good. I would love to step in the shoes of Kyle Hyde once more, solve a mystery within another building, whether it be a hotel again, or his apartment building, or an old folks home. That's my dream. That's the real dream. I want to play a detective game starring Kyle Hyde from Hotel Dusk in an old folks home. Maybe he's an old man in the old folks home. And that concludes today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. What are your dream sequels? What do you want to see continued? Maybe there's a series that still has the possibility of getting a sequel. What one is it? Tell me about it. I want to know. Leave it in the comments below. Also, I talked about this book a few episodes ago. I was reviewing it for the newspaper I worked at. I finished reading it. The review is up. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Also, speaking of new content, if you don't know, I create content for another channel called The Sandbox. I created a playlist in my channel that has all the videos I've put up thus far. This week, I put up a video that features the Wolfenstein, the history of Wolfenstein, a franchise that I've grown to love quite dearly over the years, and I'm really proud of that video, so you should please go check it out. I'll link it, that will also be in the description. With all that said, thank you guys for coming back once again. I am Kurt Indovina. I was backlit for this thing. I had a backlight. I have a light. I don't use it much. Why not? You're all great. Till next week. Goodbye.